Hi, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm honored to be speaking with you today. I'm going to just start sharing my screen and we will hop right into it. All right. Everybody see that okay, I hope? So my name is, I'm sorry?
Looks great, Kate.
All right, great. Glad you can see it. Thank you. My name is Kate DeForest. I'm from the State University of New York at Oswego. Web and digital content coordinator, as Lisa said, and this is small shifts to help improve digital accessibility. I'm going to start off by asking, is anyone familiar with the book Atomic Habits? I don't know if you guys want to just like raise your hand in the Zoom, or you don't have to, whatever. Atomic Habits by James Clear, phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. It has nothing to do with digital accessibility per se. However, in this book, the premise is that small 1% shifts can have a really significant impact in any area of our lives. Small shifts are more easily implemented and generally more easily accepted than big overhauls. Like, when was the last time you tried to big overhaul anything? It's usually not a very pleasant experience, right? The effects of these small changes may not be immediately noticeable, but they build over time to become very significant. And creating good systems is more important than the end goal. Creating systems will help you get to the goal. As an example, again, I'm going to ask you a question. You can raise your hand in Zoom if you'd like. How many of us create New Year's resolutions? Right? Like, many people try to make New Year's resolutions, do things different. However, many people fail at keeping those resolutions for all 365 days, right? The basic premise of the Atomic Habits says we fail at this, not because we're bad or anything like that, but because we simply focus on the end goal and we don't consider how it is we're going to get there. So all of the quotes that I use in here are directly from the book Atomic Habits. This quote says, "The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game." So that's kind of what we're going to focus on and talk about today, is continuing playing that accessibility game. So my objectives for today are to share some tips on how to implement and incorporate the 4 laws of Atomic Habits to help improve digital accessibility. And those 4 laws are: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So number 1, make it obvious. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. You want to create or build an environment that supports the habit that you're implementing, right? So if you want to start eating healthier, for example, most likely you ditch all the candy bars and junk food and potato chips that you have stashed away in various parts of the house. You'll probably buy some fruit, maybe put a big bowl of fruit in the middle of the table. Premise being, you see the fruit, you eat the fruit. I keep daily vitamin bottles on top of my coffee maker because my coffee maker is a prominent appliance in my kitchen. So every time I go into the kitchen, I see my vitamin bottles on top of the coffee maker and I take my daily vitamins. A couple of years ago, I bought an incline sit-up bench and I put it in my bedroom because there's nothing sexier than having a sit-up bench in your bedroom, right? But I knew that if it was in the basement, it wouldn't get any use. Because it's in my bedroom, I use that thing almost every day. So the same for digital accessibility. It needs to be forefront of the conversation, front and center. We can do this by meeting people where they are, both physically and conceptually. Sneak accessibility into unexpected places. Generally speaking, people who need this information aren't always aware that they need this information, right? So make it an automatic part of workshops, orientations, course developments, that type of thing. Hold training during regular department meetings. Think about all of the opportunities that are already in place on your campus where you have a captive audience. right? At Oswego, we have regular department meetings. We have faculty assembly. We have faculty retreats. We have onboarding orientation. We have president's council, directors meetings, all kinds of things that are already on the calendar. Use those opportunities to talk about digital accessibility. Now, I just said sneak it into unexpected places. However, when you are speaking of digital accessibility, you need to be very direct, clear, and specific. This should not be treated as an afterthought or an add-on. And you can't just tell people you need to make your materials accessible. Like, people don't always understand what that means. And don't beat around the bush. We've tried, it doesn't work. So you need to tell them why they need to make materials more accessible, who it helps, and then provide them with the resources and a variety of training opportunities that will help them put the how into play, help them provide their materials to be accessible. Providing a variety of training formats. At Oswego, we have beginner level and intermediate level sessions. We have both written and video tutorials. We hold a lot of Zoom sessions similar to what we're doing right now, and then we record it and post it on the website. So we try to include the synchronous and asynchronous sessions. So we try to build in a lot of redundancy, right? If you're asking people to learn something new, which accessibility in a lot of ways is still kind of new to people. So if you're asking someone to learn something, don't ask them to go out of their way to do it. Make it as obvious and as easy as it can be for them. Principle number 2, making it attractive. We can find evidence for whatever mindset we choose. Now, this boils down to need to versus want to. And I'm going to share a story with you guys about myself. Please don't judge. I hope this is a safe place. When I was a kid, I was a little bit of an epic brat to my parents. And if I didn't want to go somewhere with my family, which was kind of quite often, I would make that very known. And I would say things like, I'm not going to have any fun. None of my friends are going to be there. This is stupid. Why do I have to go? And my father would say to me, of course, you're not going to have any fun if you don't want to go. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to actually realize what that statement meant and to fully understand that my attitude about the thing before we even got there was determining how I was going to feel about whatever thing that was. As another quick example, there is a brief story in the book about a man in a wheelchair, and he's once asked if it's difficult to be confined by his wheelchair. And the man responded, I'm not confined by my wheelchair. My wheelchair liberates me. If I didn't have this chair, I would be bedbound. My chair allows me to leave the house. So your wording around digital accessibility can help shift the mindset of other people, and it can help create a more positive environment for people. So shift that perspective, change the wording in order to help build a community. Right? We as human beings strive to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to be part of that community. It's why we have things like book clubs, running clubs, motorcycle gangs, knitting clubs. Like, you can find a club for anything under the sun, right? Because we crave that community. Let your audience know they don't have to figure things out by themselves. Use each other's strengths and build that network of support. And it's generally easier to stick with a habit as part of a group rather than alone, right? If I decide that I want to go running and I wake up one morning and I say, oh, it's rainy and cold out, I don't want to go. Nobody cares. I'm the only one that's affected by that decision. But if I'm part of a running group and I say, yes, I'm going to meet you guys at 9 a.m. to go running, and then I don't show up, other people are going to notice and they're going to call me out on it and say, why didn't you show up at 9 o'clock? What happened? Are you okay? So again, the same is true for the digital accessibility community and environment. Help each other grow, help each other use each other's strengths, and then hold each other accountable as well. And the content creator then becomes the superhero in this story, right? It's the difference between saying to someone, you need to make your materials more accessible, which, by the way, people don't like to be told they need to do something. Instead, you can flip it around and you can say, you get to create a more positive experience for others by making your materials more accessible. So now you're the superhero. By removing those potential barriers, you're creating a more positive experience for someone. Focus on the benefits that accessibility has for a wide range of audiences as well. Accessibility features can benefit those who are experiencing temporary, situational, permanent disabilities, even those with no disabilities at all. As a quick example, I read a story about the Oswego Good Grips potato peeler. Everyone familiar, right? Everybody familiar with these potato peelers? On the left-hand side of the screen, we have like the old school 1970s, 80s, all metal, really scrawny, hard to hold potato peeler. And on the right side of the screen, we have the Good Grips potato peeler. Big fat handle, rubber handle, much more comfortable. The story that I read was that there was a retired businessman who was on vacation with his wife, and his wife had arthritis, and she was trying to peel potatoes using one of these old school metal potato peelers. And because of her arthritis, she was having a very hard time with it. So this retired businessman came up with the idea of having a big fat rubber handle that was much easier and more comfortable to hang on to. He marketed it or sold it or whatever to Oswego. They ran with the idea, and instead of marketing it as something that was beneficial to people with arthritis, they marketed it as something that was beneficial to everybody. And I don't know about you guys, but any day of the week, I will choose a Good Grips over one of the metal things, hands down, right? It's just easier to use. So by removing potential barriers, you are allowing people to consume digital content without really having to think about how they're consuming it. It just makes it easier to use. Moving on to number 3 now, making it easy. And I feel like in a lot of ways, these all kind of mesh together, right? Like make it obvious can also be make it easy. Make it attractive can also be kind of make it easy. They all kind of mix in. So if you want to master a habit, the key is to start with repetition, not perfection. And I feel like this is kind of the meat and bones of meat and potatoes, maybe, of building the system of digital accessibility. So what do I mean by this? If you're going to run a 5K, chances are you're not going to jump up off the couch and go stand at the starting line. You have to ease into it, right? You start with like a couch to 5K program. If you're learning how to play an instrument, for those of us who are parents, who have had children who have learned to play an instrument, we don't pull out Beethoven and Bach. We start with scales and Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star ad nauseum, right? Doing one sit-up a day is not going to immediately impact your overall wellness, but doing all these things, the Couch to 5K program, doing one sit-up a day, playing scales until your fingers fall off, like all of those things set you up to do the habit repeatedly. You're training your brain that those things are a part of your everyday routine. How do we form habits? By doing things over and over and over again. So whether we realize it or not, whether the habits are good for us or not, we create habits for ourselves all the time. So doing these things allows the action to become automatic. Once the action is automatic, then we can build on it. So how does this translate to digital accessibility? Introduce one aspect at a time. Broken down into baby steps, the individual aspects of accessibility are not terribly difficult to understand and implement, right? Most of them are pretty easy. So take baby steps. break it down to one individual aspect at a time to allow it to be more manageable. This prevents people from getting frustrated and overwhelmed and then shutting down when it comes to digital accessibility, which is exactly what happened on the Oswego campus. We started talking about all of these accessibility things. People didn't fully understand what we were talking about. They got very frustrated. And then all of a sudden they just shut down. No, I don't want to do that. I don't have time. I can't do it, whatever. When you break it down into one thing at a time, it becomes much more manageable, right? Digital accessibility is a continual process. We will never be 100% accessible to 100% of the people 100% of the time. However, in the spirit of Atomic Habits, which focuses on 1%, we can strive to be 1% more accessible than we were last week or last year or last month or whatever. And continuing to move, even that 1% is pushing in the right direction. Piggyback off other professional development opportunities. At Oswego, twice a year in between semesters, we hold 2 weeks of professional development. There's a variety of sessions that are held throughout the campus. Majority of the campus members, staff, and faculty are aware of this professional opportunity, so they look for things that they can learn about. And members of our accessibility work group just jumped right on that bandwagon. We took full advantage of that starting a few years ago, and we hold as many accessibility related sessions as we can possibly muster within those 2-week time. We get the publicity from the professional development. We get the visual. People know about it. Our audience is a little bit bigger than it has been traditionally. So we use that opportunity to kind of boost our own numbers and get the word out. You can also create an accessibility hub to make things easy for people to learn. You want to be able to spoon feed information to people, right? So if you have an accessibility website or an accessibility hub, you can offer pre-created templates. You can offer checklists to help people kind of go down the list to see if they're doing things correctly. Outside articles, we use DeQ, and we use a lot of videos from LinkedIn Learning, both of which are online learning platforms. We have our own tutorials, both written and video tutorials, and I will share a lot of this with you sort of at the end. So we offer our own tutorials to help people go step by step of how to implement certain accessibility aspects. And then we offer a list of people. We have a listing of all of our accessibility focused groups, of which there are, I think, 5 on campus. And we offer a list of the people within those groups. So if someone's looking for an actual person to connect with or ask a question, it's right there on our accessibility website. So again, trying to spoon feed the information to people, make it as easy as possible for them to get what they need. And then number 4, make it satisfying. Pleasure teaches your brain that a behavior is worth remembering and repeating. Now, I will admit, this aspect, this atomic habit, seems to be the most complicated, maybe, to add into digital accessibility. This is something that Oswego is continually working on. Would not say that we're proficient at it, but we're definitely getting it in there. Our brains are hardwired to prioritize immediate gratification over delayed gratification, right? Which is why it's a million times easier to sit on the couch eating a box of donuts while binge watching Netflix instead of going to work out at the gym. We know which is the healthier option, but eating donuts tastes good now, right? You go to the gym and you work out for an hour. Even if you work out for an hour every day for like a month, the results probably are not going to be immediately noticeable, which is why our brains get frustrated and we don't want to do that. We focus on the rewards for our present self versus our future self. So we need to kind of trick ourselves a little bit, make that mind shift, and we need to reward ourselves for mini goals along the way in order to stay on that track that provides a long-term benefit for us. So providing small, immediate rewards for people participating in accessibility activities or tasks is very useful. It can be very useful. One of these things is a little more abstract, connecting and sharing with others. We feel good when we can connect with others and when we share our knowledge. So I highly encourage people to take advantage of knowledge hierarchy. And what I mean by that is there's always going to be someone who knows a little bit more than us about something. And there's always going to be someone who knows not quite as much, right? So if we can learn from those who know more and then share with those who don't know as much, it's like a win-win. We just learned something, which makes us feel good. And then we share that information with someone else, which also makes us feel good. So it's a big circle of winning. We all have stories of successes. We all have stories of mistakes, and we all probably have a couple of really epic failures along our journey. And sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly can be beneficial in helping each other learn. It goes back to that community that I spoke of earlier, right? Building that community and building off of each other's strengths. Whenever possible, try to connect with people who have disabilities or use assistive technology. Let them tell their story and let them relate how their experience has been affected or impacted. A couple of years ago at Oswego, we invited some students to come to one of our work group meetings, and these students used assistive technology, and they talked about their experiences in an online environment. They brought up points that faculty had never considered previously. One of the points that I remember them talking about was needing extra time to process the conversation that was taking place in an online discussion board. And the humanities professors that were in the room were absolutely floored. They figured having an online discussion board was a nice, easy, safe place for people to share ideas and go back and forth. And the students were saying, no, by the time we log in and we read the initial question or topic of discussion and process whatever comments are already there, right? And then they have to take it back and process it themselves and work through things, which takes a little bit of extra time for some people. And then they got back online to try to present their point of view or their comment. And more often than not, the conversation had completely veered off in a different direction. So whatever it was that student was going to say was kind of moot. Which again, the professors were just absolutely blown away by that. So it always makes a difference to try to connect with your actual audience, with people who use assistive technology, and find out what their stories are and find out what's actually beneficial to them. As far as other incentives go, you could try adding different gamification aspects. This could include bingo cards, checklists, maybe having an online scavenger hunt of sorts, providing badges to display in email or social media. You could do like giveaways, raffles, have some fun little accessibility swag, right? If someone takes a particular training or does a particular accessibility course, they can get some of these things. At Oswego, we recently shifted from Blackboard learning management system to Brightspace. And our support team held what was called Migration and Munchies. Anyone care to guess what took place at Migration and Munchies? It was basically office hours where faculty could come in and get help from the support team to migrate their courses and get all of their course materials in the new learning management system. And they offered food, right? Because who doesn't like some free food and free snacks? So it was a little bit of an incentive for the faculty to go in and actually get that course material transferred over. Bottom line is make the experience fun. Like do whatever fits on your campus to try to bring people together and put that little gamification aspect into it and make it a fun thing for everyone. Continue to build that community that we talked about. And again, it goes back to being the superhero. Content creators become the superhero by creating more inclusive experiences for those who are trying to use their digital materials. So putting it all together here at SUNY Oswego, we held a couple different campus accessibility challenges. And the first challenge was held in January of 2021. This was a 10-day challenge. And this was in direct response to the pandemic. An overwhelming number of classes went online, right? And we basically had a team of one that was responsible for online remediation. That was me. So when everything went online, we realized one person cannot be responsible for this. We need to include other people. We need to put the accountability back on the faculty members. So we held a 10-day challenge, which I'll talk about in a little more detail. We focused on Word documents. We had about 200 people sign up. Now, 200 people out of a campus of 8,000 or so is approximately 2.5% of the entire campus population. Not a big number, but again, in the spirit of Atomic Habits, we're looking to move that needle just 1% forward, right? So now 200 people on our campus have information that they did not previously have. And they are aware of the Digital Accessibility Initiative where they may not have been aware previously. In March of 2021, we held a presentations challenge that was focused on slide decks. We had about 50 registrants for that, so smaller number. The timing was a little bit different. There were a couple of other things that we figured played into that. In January of 2022, we took our 10-day challenge format and we chopped it in half. We held a 5-day challenge. We provided information for 2 paths. You could choose the beginner path or the intermediate path. And this was set up similar to the 10-day challenge. However, again, like I mentioned, we shortened the time span. We allowed them 2 paths to choose from. And the information in the original 10-day challenge was presented in emails. We realized that the emails were going to be approximately 7 miles long if we sent all of this information to them. So we created web pages that reflected the beginner path and the intermediate path. And then my 4th bullet point here, we have currently in development is a self-guided accessibility course module. We hope to release this potentially later this year, if not very early next year. This is modeled after our challenges, and it's going to be distributed through Brightspace Learning Management, which I believe is used by all 64 campuses on the State University system in New York. So anyone within the SUNY system would be able to have access to this module. It allows people to get the information and to learn at their own pace without having to have an organized challenge event. So how did the principles play into all of these, right? Make it obvious. All of these, the first 3 bullet points, the last one, like I said, is in development, so that doesn't really count. But the first 3 presentations were campus-wide promotion plans. They were offered to all campus personnel. We had multiple recruitment emails sent through our communications and marketing office. And then once we had our participant list, we sent daily emails to them. So we had very consistent communication every day throughout the length of the challenge. Making it attractive, this goes back to the wording. Previously on the Oswego campus, we had said, you need to do this. And we were getting a lot of pushback. People didn't like us telling them what they had to do. So we flipped it and we said, you want to participate in this challenge. You want to make your materials accessible because it's the right thing to do. It helps all of your students, not just people with disabilities, especially after everything went online in 2020. The pandemic highlighted brilliantly outlying situations that benefit from accessibility features that we had never really considered before because the need had not been there. Right? So including accessibility features helps lots and lots of people that you may not even realize. As I said, with the 5-day challenge, we allowed participants to choose which path they wanted. So we made the attractiveness that way by allowing them to decide what they wanted to do with the information. And then again, just reiterating the benefits that accessibility has to people who are experiencing permanent, temporary, or situational disabilities. Once again, with the pandemic, there were lots of situations that popped up that never had to be considered before that benefit from using different accessibility features online. So we wanted to be sure to make that point known to our audience that they were helping others be able to more easily consume digital content. And the third point, make it easy. We focused on one topic per day for each of these challenges. We broke everything down, one topic per day. This, again, allowed us to present accessibility in small, bite-sized pieces, which is much more easy to digest, much more easily understood, and more easily manageable than like looking at the entire accessibility mountain. We provided lots of resources and step-by-step tutorials. Again, we provided both written and video tutorials because we were asking people to learn something. We were asking people to do something new. So we tried to build in that redundancy to make it easy for them to be able to absorb the information. We also used some outside articles and courses from places like LinkedIn and DQ. And then principle number 4, make it satisfying. Studies show that having some kind of reward draws people in. We love to see those green check boxes instead of the red X's, right? We love to be able to say, I did that, I can cross it off, I can move on to the next level. So for our challenges, as I mentioned, we could have beefed up this aspect a little bit. We did offer a certificate of completion. So when the challenge was over, we had a very brief survey that our participants could fill out, and then they could submit their name and they received a certificate that said, yes, this person did this accessibility challenge. Reminding participants again, I know this is like the 3rd or 4th time I've said this, but I think it's really important. Reminding participants that they are the superhero in the scenario. Even if you're not making your materials 100% accessible, which again is not possible, making your materials more accessible than what they used to be can have a really big impact on how someone using assistive technology takes in your materials. So who doesn't want to be the superhero, right? Like who wants to be that person that leaves a barrier in place that could create a very negative experience for someone? So the bottom line, success is not a goal to reach or a finish line to cross. It is a system to improve, an endless process to refine. Focus on the system for digital accessibility. There is no finish line, right? Going back to our losing weight and eating healthy example, if we spend the time to exercise and eat fruit and do all these healthy things and we lose 50 pounds, once we hit that benchmark, we can't just go sit back on the couch and start eating donuts again, right? In order to maintain that lifestyle that allows us to keep that weight off, we need to shift our entire mindset and approach to both eating and exercise. Again, the same is true for digital accessibility, right? It's a different mindset, but we have to shift how we look at it. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be an add-on. We have to put it front and center. We have to put it right in front of people, and we have to continue to make those small 1% improvements throughout the campus that helps maintain that accessibility system. And maintaining that system will help eventually push the culture along, and that's what makes the change. So again, continually strive to improve, continually review your materials. You can't just set it and forget it. Keep working to improve the basics. Keep working to connect with others. Keep working to share the information with others. Whether it's within your campus or, national conferences or whatever the case may be, there's always someone that you can learn from. And then there's always someone that you can share that information with. It's very important to invest in the digital accessibility culture. And I'll share with you a brief story about Oswego. In 2017, we were among a number of schools that faced a complaint from the Office of Civil Rights. And in 2017, we were just kind of starting to go through the accessibility door. We were just kind of getting our hands dirty with it. So we didn't really know what we were doing, or we didn't really know that we were doing anything wrong. So we had this complaint in front of us, and we could have ignored it, which, would have ended very badly for us. Or instead, administration decided this is going to be a learning opportunity. What do we have to do to make things better? So a couple of our administrators were savvy enough to be able to restructure, reallocate, and reprioritize some of our money. And by the way, let me just state, SUNY stands for State University of New York. State University of New York. We are a liberal arts, public state university. We are not rolling in dough, okay? We don't have a lot of money within our organization. But because of this complaint coming in, as I mentioned, some of our administrators realized how important it was. And so we started pulling little 1% of resources from various nooks and crannies within our organization. There are always nooks and crannies. If you critically look at how time, money, and personnel are being spent, there's almost always places where you can skim just a little bit. And if you can skim those 1% and provide those to the leaders of your organization, the leaders are going to forge forward. They're going to break old habits. They're going to make things happen. Now, when I talk about leaders, I don't necessarily mean people high up in position. I believe the work environment is made up of 4 separate groups. The beginning of the line are the leaders, the go-getters, the world changers. Behind them are the supporters. They're the ones who say things like, oh, I never thought of that. That's a great idea. I'm on board. Third in line then lies the skeptics, who are the people that say, I don't know, there's been some really sketchy things that have happened, and I just don't know if that's a good idea. And they start throwing out all kinds of excuses. And eventually they probably say, okay, well, fine, I'm in. But if this fails, it's not on me, not my idea. And then at the other end of the line, we have the full-on resistors, the people who do not want to change for anything, right? So if you take these 1% of your resources and give them to the go-getters, the leaders at the front of the employment curve, they will push forward. They will find a way to make things happen, and they will drag everyone else along with them. I do believe that it's not a question of if, but a matter of when organizations will see some sort of complaint or possibly a lawsuit. If you approach digital accessibility with that mindset, you will be in a much better position to resolve and handle whatever complaint comes at you. On the other hand, if a complaint never does come, then you can rest assured that your organization is doing something right. And I think the biggest question that any organization can ask itself is, what is the cost of not changing? What happens if we do absolutely nothing different? So I thank you all very much for your time. I did say that I would share some resources. I have a couple of more links that are available in the Word document handout as well. My email is kathleen.deforest@oswego.edu. Our accessibility website is oswego.edu/accessibility. And then just for fun, if anybody's interesting, atomichabits.com. And if anyone has, I do see there's a couple questions in the Q&A.
Yeah. Hi, Kate. Just real quick before we jump into the Q&A, we want to go ahead and send out the poll for this session. It was really great, and I really liked the there toward the end where you brought up where it's like if you never get sued or have a complaint, then you're clearly doing something right. And I think that point is lost on people, where instead of, maybe they think, well, we never got a complaint, so why are we doing this?
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's exactly why you're doing this.
Yeah.
So that you don't get the complaints. So that's great. Anyway, you just, the poll is up now. Don't forget that if you answer the questions in the poll, you're entered to win some prizes. We will be selecting winners from everybody that does the poll after the conference, and we'll get in touch with everybody after that. And if anybody has any more questions to add to the Q&A, now is the time to do it. And I'm going to start going through the few that we have. So the first up, we have a question from Rebecca. And they ask, how branded for your institution is the new Brightspace module? Asking for a SUNY colleague.
Yes. Hello, Rebecca. I know Rebecca. Branded for that. I don't have an answer to that yet because we're still in the Google Doc brainstorming phase of this. So we haven't actually put it in Brightspace. I do believe that it's going to be branded as Oswego's, but again, it's meant to be shared within the SUNY system. And for those of you who are not in New York, hopefully at some point above and beyond SUNY and New York as well, we hope to use this as kind of a jumping off point for many people and be able to share the information so other universities can either take part of it or can use it and adapt for their own institutions as well. So can't really answer that question at the moment, Rebecca.
That's great. Yeah, we're probably going to be hitting you up about getting access to some of those modules, Kate. We'll bounce some ideas off of each other. Next, we have a question from Anonymous. What shifts did you observe or create that made the biggest differences? Especially what aspects would you say made the biggest difference?
That's a great question. I think the 10-day and 5-day accessibility challenges that we held really had a big impact. The 10-day challenge, as I mentioned, was in direct response to the pandemic. So timing probably did have a lot to do with that whole participation. People were suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, everything's online. I have to do all these things now. And holy cow, there's all this, all this stuff that needs to be done. So providing the step-by-step information on how to incorporate different aspects of accessibility, I think really did kind of sink into a lot of people. And even if they didn't finish the challenge, I know that we had a lot of people who signed up but didn't necessarily make it to the end of 10 days. We spoon-fed them that information every single day. So the info and the links and the tutorials and everything was right there in their email. And that was very purposeful so they could go back and look at it later. Hopefully they kept some of those or bookmarked the websites and things that we shared so they could go back and review that information later. I don't have any data points or numbers, unfortunately, so I can't really share, specifically data speaking how it impacted the campus. But just from things that we heard, minor surveys that we provided, we really felt that having those challenges was kind of exciting to people, and they really wanted to learn the information.
Awesome. All right, next we have another question from Anonymous. How can organizations effectively provide an accessibility office hour service in a hybrid work model where hosting an open virtual session may not be productive and participants may be hesitant to ask accessibility related questions? Would utilizing your one topic approach be beneficial for achieving better results?
Another great question. Yeah, this is kind of, unfortunately, this is something that Oswego hasn't really implemented yet. When we did our 10-day challenge during the 2-week professional development period, we held specific sessions that spoke about different aspects of accessibility. We also did hold a 1-hour Q&A session every day for those 2 weeks. So a couple of work group members would get on Zoom and just kind of sit there and wait for people to show up. We didn't have a lot of people come in, but the people who did come had specific questions that we were able to walk them through. And we've talked about having this be like a more kind of permanent feature where we, log on once a week or whatever. We have these open office hours. I think that it's a great idea. And I think that it really could be beneficial, although you're probably not going to get a huge audience or, a huge following for that. But focusing on one topic, I think, has really kind of drilled down the fact that accessibility does not need to be hard. When we look at accessibility, we see this big mountain, and people on the Oswego campus were like, wait, you want me to do all this accessibility stuff to all of my materials that I've ever created in the history of ever? And we were like, no, we didn't say that. So breaking it down and really emphasizing, start where you are. Think about next semester. Think about the courses that you're teaching most immediately. Think about the materials that are used like every day repeatedly, and focus on one thing at a time. Add headings. Adding headings is a click on a drop-down list, right? So it takes 3 seconds to learn how to properly style a heading in a Word document. Focusing in on the simplicity of how accessibility can easily be implemented. And likewise, not only telling them what to do, but why. Adding headings in a document can make it immensely easier for someone using a screen reader to read through that document, right? As opposed to just reading the whole thing word by word, they can skip from heading to heading. They can look for different sections. So I think understanding the why as well is important. I feel like I've kind of gone off the rails a little bit, but to the point of holding office hours and utilizing the one topic approach, I do think that that's a really great way to go. And again, you may not get a huge audience, but just putting it out there and letting people know that it doesn't have to be difficult to do, I think really kind of drives the point home.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we found that the why is very important when in all of our trainings that we do as well.
Yeah, it goes back to like, people don't like to be told what to do. Mm-hmm. So when you say you need to do this, faculty particularly, no offense to any faculty who are on the call, but the faculty in particular were like, I'm sorry, what now? I got to do what? But when you explain why, and then you give them the individual resources and show, look, it's easy to do this. Here's how to do it. Here's a 3-minute video that explains to you how to put this thing in. Then it suddenly becomes much more manageable.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Looks like we just have one more question from Anonymous. And they ask, to what extent do you incorporate W3 WAI resources into your trainings?
Those I personally have not dove into very deeply. We do reference the WCAG standards. WAI is something that I have been interested in wanting to really go into and learn more about, just with my full-time responsibilities, which is not accessibility. I have not had the time to do that. So we've kind of gathered information from a number of different places. As I mentioned a couple of times, we've used LinkedIn. We've used DeQ, we have used WCAG standards, and we kind of pool them all together. We've used some other university websites as well. We've kind of pooled them all together and created resources that we share out. But using the W3 WAI resources is an excellent way to go. I just haven't had time to dive into it quite yet.
Well, yeah, you're like the rest of us, and we have so much free time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I have about 2 seconds free time every day, so it's it gets a little daunting, but no, that's okay. There's always something new to learn, and I always love learning things. I love going to conferences, even virtually like this, and sharing what I know, but also learning what other people know. So like, if you have something that you think would be beneficial to me, please feel free to either share it or email me, or get in touch on LinkedIn or whatever. I'm always happy to have these kind of conversations, because I think everyone can benefit from hearing everyone else's stories.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good place to leave it for we're at time. And so we're going to go ahead and start our 10-minute break. Thanks for coming, Kate. And where you mentioned the OCR, the Office of Civil Rights folks a little bit in your session, and they are actually who is coming up next. So,
oh, excellent.